teachers of Reddit, what was the most disturbing thing you witnessed in your classroom? I used to teach at a high school where kids were always trying to sneak wherever they could for Shreks. Well, I walked into the auditorium heading up to the stage. I taught stagecraft, and see this odd pile of liquid that looked sort of mucus-like. Then as I looked closer I realized it looked familiar to something else. As I was about to call my coworker to discuss, I look up and see two students getting dressed in the catwalk above my head, confirming that there was indeed semen at my feet. I was standing in for another teacher during a math lesson. I was helping one student at his desk when another student started screaming. He had been playing around and falling out of his seat on purpose for a laugh. Unfortunately, the last fall got him a pencil in the eye. Lots of blood. Luck it didn't puncture his eyeball, just the membrane beside it. I'm a special ed teacher. One of my aides punched my student, 6 years old, with severe autism, in the face and gave him a bloody nose. The principal and special ed director defended her and made up a different story to tell the parent and CPS. That's what they do. The aide still works in my district, but not in my classroom anymore. I don't think I will ever get over it. It rages me to talk about it, and I've been through some dark shit with this district. My father was a teacher in his youth, more or less 1970. Once, the class had ended, and the kids were talking a little loud, 5 minutes before the final bell, so no harm done. Then, a preceptor/prefect, not sure if there's an English word for it, arrived to the classroom. The kids didn't pay any attention to him, and the newcomer was not pleased by it. So he yelled at a kid, barely 12 years old, grabbed the back of his neck and pushed until his body hit the wall. Class went silent. Dad told him to release the kid. Preceptor/prefect refused. My father didn't work here for much longer. Preceptor/prefect was fired a few months later after punching a kid in the face and making him faint. Obligatory not a teacher, but in the 7th grade life science course some kid licked the dead, formaldehyde squid that we were meant to dissect. A genuine full-body lick, and it wasn't even for a dare or anything. My father taught at a high school in Germany. About 30 years ago, one of his students was kidnapped, sexually assaulted and killed. Since it was a small town with only a couple thousand inhabitants, the police ordered every resident to provide a sample of their DNA. They built a giant testing facility just next to the school. Luckily, the killer was found a few weeks later. It was the first time that the police used mass DNA testing in Germany. I had a 6th grade girl lose 3 teeth in the span of a class period. They were loose because she was a foster child who had grown up in some seriously fricked up and poor conditions and didn't have dental hygiene until she was removed from said fricked up home life. Not a teacher, but I worked with special needs kids. Little girl is sitting at the table drawing on a pad, gets up, stabs me with the pen. I needed stitches. She then just returned to drawing like nothing happened. When I was in 8th grade science class, a classmate drank something we were working on in lab. He was immediately rushed to the hospital. I walked in on class with the boys measuring their penises. When kids do unprovoked mean shoot to get a rise out of the weird kid, that shoot is evil. Lunchtime, group of popular kids shamed the students who got free lunches, started yelling and cussing them out, took their lunches and threw them in the trash. Big fight broke out and the popular students had in school suspension for 2 weeks. Some students still made fun of the poor students, but that stopped when fights kept breaking out. The popular students were hated after though. Some other students brought in spoiled milk and would pour it on them. Kid had diarrhea in his pants and did nothing. Smelled awful. I saw a wet spot on his rear end and he poked it and sniffed his finger. Wasn't a student in my class, but I was assisting another teacher when I noticed. He was 1st or 2nd grade and I don't normally work with those kids. So I discreetly informed the teacher and that was the extent to which I was involved in that. Not a teacher, but there are a few, some of which I have told in replies to other comments on here. I once walked in on 2 of my classmates boning in the prayer room. Admittedly, I was there to skip class, but I definitely didn't expect that. We were all 13. Another one is when a friend of mine punched another kid so hard in the stomach, to be honest he deserved it, that he coughed blood. Okay, not that much, and had to go to hospital. We later found out he wasn't actually internally bleeding, but had bitten his own tongue somehow. I actually thought I had just witnessed a murder and I was gonna go to jail or something. Lastly, on an overnight school trip to the coast, I was looking for my phone charger and walked in on a kid who had eaten 6 sweet brownies, because we had to get on a train the next day and would apparently be searched beforehand. I didn't want to get him in trouble, so I called a few other kids and we got him to the bathroom, where he threw up a couple of times and just got him to drink a lot of water. He fell asleep and was basically fine the next day. My mom's a teacher and 2 kids in her class tried to have Shreks at indoor carpool. It was raining. They were both in like 3rd grade and my mom was mortified. Not a teacher, but I remember in 4th grade there was a girl who had a lot of issues at home, including her parents' divorce and abuse from her older brothers, and God knows what her mom used to say to her. Girl had severe PTSD, panic disorder, and would have a lot of meltdowns because of what she went through. One day she wasn't behaving in English class and the teacher said something along the lines of, "This is why your parents are separating." The girl freaked out and started screaming, crying and hitting the teacher. It was obviously not normal and I could tell she wasn't stable and needed help, even at my young age back then. The teacher, however, called her a monster and reported her to the principal. And, instead of having her see the counselor or contacting her parents, they suspended her for a week and gave her a month worth of detention. I'll never forget how fricked up it was. That little girl needed serious help, not punishment. I have to view the safety footage on a video recording of a middle school band classroom, percussion class, 7th graders, 40 or so kids. Teacher would tell kids to sit on their drumsticks when it wasn't their turn to play during test time. One kid decided to sit on the drumsticks vertically like a dumbass, puts all his weight on the drumsticks. The small tip of one pushes through his pants, enters his beehole, pierces his rectum and breaks. Watch him get up, walk out calmly and go to the nurse to report it. Crazy, ass, shoot. I was a student back then. We had a breakfast kind of thing where each one of us brings a dish and we all eat in class. I always hated Thursdays, equivalent to Fridays in the West as the start of the weekend, because something fricked up would always happen on a Thursday. Once we finished eating, one of the students went to the bathroom to wash the bowl he got. In the bathroom, he slipped and fell. The glass bowl was shattered into large chunks and cut him in the face. There was blood everywhere and it took me ages to get the image out of my nightmares. He had a very long cut from the top of his head to his right cheek through his eye. He lost it. Since that day, I am extra careful around anything that is made of glass. Not a teacher, but in electronics class, I did witness my teacher sever his finger on the bandsaw. As a 3rd grader, my teacher didn't like how my classmate put his chair up onto his desk before dismissal, and she yanked the chair from the desk and slammed it down onto him. Whole class was in shock and fell silent. She didn't stop there. She essentially went apeshit. Started aggressively yanking chairs off desks left and right as most of us began screaming at her to stop. Some kids started crying. One kid peed his pants, I'm assuming out of nervousness, fear, and she dragged him by his backpack to the front of the room to put him on display, screaming at him to do a little turn so all your friends can see what a coward you are. It was horrific, traumatizing. Obviously, that was her last day of teaching. She was diagnosed with and died from inoperable stomach cancer less than 6 months later. Not a teacher, but a classmate cut his finger working an auto shop class, junior year. The teacher followed policy and closed down the area for the day. It was ruled an accident. The kid survived, though I never saw that kid again. I didn't see in personal, as I didn't take up auto shop as an elective, but knew the kid and teacher. It was a classmate in an unrelated class who told me and a few others. This was early 2004, taking over the talks about the Super Bowl with our Patriots when Aunt Janet Jackson, the classmate, explained how the finger was just ripped off, pretty much degloved. Save yourself the nightmares and not look it up. The teacher, whom I had for wood shop back in middle school, wasn't at fault as he had strict rules, but knows he can't prevent everything. He was going by what was allowed. Auto shop teacher proposed some new safety rules about it, which the school agreed. As the kid was doing a solo work when this happened, the teacher made it a rule that all projects must be at least 2 persons. I was pre-service, student teacher, and helping teach the students how to graph. I look around to see a strange kid doing something I hope to never witness again. My tolerance for weird is high, very high, but this kid had his hands sitting like he was giving the thumbs up, but he was vigorously simulating a blowjob. Everyone else in the room seemed oblivious. Not a teacher, but one day in science class we had a substitute. Some kids were picking on the weird kid and he started to growl at them. 8th grade, by the way. Well, it was funny and the kids kept picking on him. Weird kid picks up a pencil and stabbed one of them in the leg. D&D club got disbanded because the students were having Shreks with each other and role-playing it out in front of the teacher. Edit. What the frick, I was just posting about my shooty middle school and 50 upvotes in like 3 hours. Thanks I guess. I used to be a cop in the Baltimore PD before I became a teacher in the public school system. I most worked on cases doing desk work, pulling paperwork, etc., but realized policing wasn't for me and became a teacher. I was in a little over my head at first, but started to get the hang of it. Just when I thought I had control of my class, I had something terrible happen. I had one girl in my class who was in and out of a group home. You could tell it was causing a tremendous emotional toll on her. The other kids would poke fun at her and started a rumor that her mom boiled and ate babies. One day, this girl who was a bit of a bully was using her watch to reflect a light from the window into this girl's face. It was such a small offense, but it finally made this girl snap. She lunged up and sliced the other girl's face with a razor blade. There was blood everywhere and the girl flailed on the ground screaming while clutching her face. The attacker just sat down on the ground trying to calm herself down, realizing what she'd just done. I had no idea how to handle it. I went home and worked all night writing down what I was going to say to the kids the next day to try and help them cope after what they'd just seen. I came in and began my little speech, but all they did was crack jokes and laugh about the incident. I couldn't believe it.